Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We just wanted to give an extra couple minutes, just knowing how fast and furious life is for everybody right now, just giving a moment for other folks to join. But we are going to kick off, and I'll start by saying welcome to Filling the Gaps, How to Navigate Pandemic Staffing Shortages. We're really thrilled that you're here and grateful that you're affording us an hour of your time, knowing that that is among the most precious commodities that you have to give right now, and that you've given it really underscores the importance of this conversation and how pandemic staffing shortages are really bearing down on everybody who's working in public education today. And so we take this conversation with the utmost seriousness and look forward to some of the insights and perspectives that will be generated through it. My name is James Haga. I am part of the team here at Thoughtexchange. I have the privilege of working with a lot of our partners across the region on a daily basis. And before we kind of properly kick off, I wanted just to set the scene a little bit and kind of share the context in which we're convening this event. So this is obviously bearing on everybody's mind right now, but as that recap, schools across the continent right now are really facing a triple threat of challenges, none of which are new, but all of which have been exacerbated by the pandemic. And those are high staff turnover, a struggle to recruit and attract new talent into our schools, and overall a declining morale and sense of wellness amongst the folks who serve in our buildings. We know that, for instance, in a recent national survey done by Education Week, 40% of school leaders described their current staff shortages as severe or very severe. And the reason why all of this is important and relevant to the context of this conversation today is that it goes without saying that if teachers and staff are not okay, if those folks are not thriving, the impact is going to be felt by kids and by students. And that's something that obviously everybody is working feverishly to try to avoid, that negative impact on students and the way in which they experience their education. And I also wanted to point out, for what it's worth, that we are not sort of self-proclaimed experts on how to mitigate and manage staffing shortages. That is not what we are expert in. That's not what we do. However, we do have the privilege of sitting in partnership with over 600 school districts across the continent. And in the context of each and every one of those partnerships, and especially true through the last 18 plus months of the pandemic, what we do bring as a unique skill set is the ability to help scale conversations. And what I mean by that in real terms is to extract the collective intelligence of any group of people to be able to quickly offer great insight that can be used to improve decisions ultimately. And it's in that context that we also are convening today's conversation, where we're hoping to facilitate in a way that is not only leaning on the perspective and expertise of the two speakers who have generously agreed to share their thoughts in today's session, but also really leaning on each and every one of you and leveraging Thoughtexchange in real time to draw out the best thinking of this whole group, so that each and every one of us can leave today's session with some new insights and perspectives around the strategies and approaches that different leaders are taking right now to not only meet this leadership challenge, but also do so in a way that is building on the culture that you're trying to establish within your school system, and really addresses some of the sharp pain that you're experiencing as it relates to staffing shortages. So we have a couple of great speakers and partners of ours who, again, have very graciously agreed to be here and to share from their lens, what they're doing and some of the ways in which they are thinking about this, not only within the moment of crisis, but also more holistically as well. So they are Leandra Jameson, who is the Executive Director of Epic Academy in Chicago, and Jesse Harper, the Superintendent of Schools at Arkport Central School District in upstate New York. Just as a fair warning, as we move through this conversation, we are going to be turning to you and really help drawing out your own unique experiences and perspectives into the conversation. And so be fair warned that we're going to be looking to have you actively engaged in this conversation. I know that in typical webinar format, it's more of a sort of sit back and receive, and you absolutely will be doing some of that, but we also want to make sure that we can really draw on the insight and intelligence of the whole group that we have here, because there's a wealth of experience to bring forth in the conversation, and you are central to allowing us to do that. But before that, we're going to start off with Jesse, and I'll pass over to Jesse now.
Thank you, James. So I'm going to bring up a couple slides to share with everybody. And hopefully everybody has a good look at that right now. I want to start by saying all of the things I'm going to talk about in the next couple slides are I've collected over the last 15 years from people much smarter than myself. So it's a collection of ideas and concepts that have hit home. And the way I look at addressing faculty and staff shortages right now, it's really backing up and coming at it from a lens of faculty and staff retention. So to give you an idea of, just who I am and where I come from, I have been at ArcPort for the last 17 years. I started in 2005 as a teacher. I was union president, and then union vice president, and then union president. And then I became principal in 2012, and I've been superintendent ever since 2016. So as I talk through these next couple slides, my perspective comes from multiple different vantage points, and the good, the bad, and the ugly that I've learned over the last 16 or 17 years at ArcPort. So when we talk in ArcPort about faculty and staff retention, it's really hard to get a hold of one thing, one idea, one concept. The first thing up there that everybody thinks about nowadays is competitive pay. I know that at ArcPort, we have changed the pay structure for many different things. Most recently for bus drivers, because bus drivers are a huge shortage right now. But as we all know, retaining and attracting employees is much more than just pay. We all know people who have either stayed at a job or changed jobs, stayed at a job for lower pay, changed jobs for different pay. It goes to much more than just compensation. So we have the mentoring, the challenge, being challenged, promotion. I won't go through all of these pieces, but these 9 ideas are what we've started to look at ArcPort that will affect retention and recruitment over the long term. But then we also bring in this idea. So looking at those 9 factors, it's how we try to build capacity with our teachers, but we also, as district leadership, whether in whatever role we are, we always fight with this idea of accountability and support within our district. And over the last 2 years, every district on the continent has done more for their faculty and staff than we ever had before. And we get tied up in this idea of we support, but where does the accountability come in? And I really like this. I just recently had a conversation in the last 2 weeks, and so this is a fairly new concept, but looking at the idea of how do you balance accountability and support? Because the fear is that we're going to do more and more and that create that culture of comfort, but we can't do that because it's called work for a reason, and we also have to support our students. So how do we blend these two? So the last slide was talking about the factors that affect our faculty and staff, but this slide is really talking about, this is the struggle I go through as a superintendent, even as a principal, of we want to do more. We want to support our faculty and staff. We want to do more for our incoming faculty and staff, and that it's just balancing that accountability piece. So I wanted to talk about like those factors that affect our employees, but also really be honest about where we're coming from in a leadership stance. So we've done this work. I stopped that first slide at 2019, not that I stopped working, because I wanted to draw everybody's attention to the last couple of years. So in the spring of 2020, we had the global pandemic hit, and that's when I decided, it was already in planning before the pandemic hit, but that's the time that we did our first faculty and staff retention survey. So we asked all of our faculty and staff multiple questions. It's a really good survey. I needed some data because, again, 16, 17 years in the district, I had collected all this information, and as schools, we're supposed to be data-driven institutions. So what is the actual data? So global pandemic hit, we did our first survey. And then this last year, and we were some in person, some in hybrid last year, but it was just like for everybody else, it was a very strange year. We did our second retention survey. So, and I bring this up for a very important reason. One of the questions that we asked on this survey is, would you recommend our Port Central School as an employer to others? So think about it, 2019 was the first year that we did it. 76% said yes, 24% said no. So that was our first data point. So we went through the spring of 2020, we went through last year. So then the next year, last year, when we asked that same question again, we went up to 92% that would recommend ArcPort as an employer. So in the toughest time, I've heard many people say they don't want to hear the word unprecedented again about what we've gone through over the last couple of years. But in the most unique time that I've seen in education as a student or as a professional, we improved a very important metric within our district by paying attention to those 9 categories. So it's not, I bring this up because it's not impossible. We didn't do everything. We started small, we addressed a few things, but we can actually move metrics around faculty and staff retention. We also had some data, going back to those 9 categories, I only bring up 1 or 2. How do our faculty and staff feel appreciated? So that first survey, pre-pandemic, you can see 26% unfavorable, 15% neutral, 58% favorable. After a year and a half of a pandemic, most unique circumstances, that shifted dramatically to the positive. So this idea of how appreciated our faculty and staff felt, we showed a major impact. And I bring it up because if anybody says it's impossible to make growth during this time, they're just not looking at the right things. But also at the same time, those 9 categories, one of them was mentoring. And you can see 2019 to 2020, there wasn't that much of a difference. So that brings us to where we are now. It's not all rainbows and kittens. There is work to be done. And so what we've done recently is around this idea of mentoring. We can't make a positive impact without knowing what our faculty and staff need. So we just recently did a thought exchange around what our faculty and staff would want to see. If they could do it again, as a new faculty and staff teacher, what would they want for their mentoring program? So we saw the data that we needed to do improvements, but then we turned around and asked our faculty and staff what they needed. And it's really good. It's quality information that we're putting into place now. We will also be looking to, because these are people who have already been mentored and onboarded. We're going to offer this, any changes we make, we're going to offer it to our current faculty and staff. So it's not just getting the data or asking the question, it's turning it around. I'll steal, like I said, everything on this slide is from people much smarter than myself. one of the sayings I remember from Thoughtexchange is closing the loop. So it's asking the question, and then it's turning around and trying to figure out what improvements you can make. And that's what this Thoughtexchange did. So the idea, there was a pickle jar in every slide on this presentation. It's this idea of the pickle jar, and that there's this, I read this and it makes sense to me, and I try to explain this. So if it doesn't, I apologize if I fumble through this. You know, it went something like, you can't look at a pickle and ask what happened to them as a cucumber without looking at the pickle jar and the brine that they are in. And so that pickle jar, I think about our school, the systems we put in place around our faculty, staff, and students, and that culture and climate. So we've looked at faculty and staff retention and improving that. And it's not only shown an improvement in our faculty and staff's picture of the school, but we had to replace 6 teachers last year. We filled all of our positions. I don't like taking teachers from neighboring districts, but they came to us. And I think that is in part to the message we're putting out about caring for our faculty and staff, listening. Lots of schools are having trouble with subs right now. We are, knock on wood, in a good position. And I think that is, to a large extent, because of the message that we're putting out regarding our faculty, staff, and how we care about them and the attention we're paying to them. So that's my last one. And I kind of went through that pretty quickly. James, do you have any questions?
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Jesse. What stands out to me more than anything is the systematic approach in thinking about retention and ensuring that you can find yourself in a position in a time like now, and that your hair isn't on fire. And that part of what I understand that you're saying is that in a large way that's attributable to the work that you've been doing over time methodically to create that environment in which people can thrive and succeed.
And I forgot to say, and I'll say it now, that we have been looking at this idea of retention and faculty staff morale for a long time. But the data shows the improvement. The pandemic turbocharged our approach and really forced us to put a lot of things in place. So I don't want people to think that you have to be looking at this for 15 years to make changes. A lot of the changes we made were over the last year and a half. And so it is possible. It doesn't take a long timeline.
Can I just
go ahead, Jim? Sorry.
I was going to ask you to double click on what some of those changes are, to your point around being hyper responsive within the last year and a half to meet the moment. Can you sort of detail out what some of those looked like and where you've seen the biggest sort of windfall as a result of those changes that you've made?
So thinking from the very smallest, our subs, again, took it from somebody smarter than me. I saw a superintendent present on how they onboard their subs. It's something as small as our new subs, when they come into the district, they get a t-shirt, our Port Central School District, so they can wear their t-shirt on Fridays, just like every other faculty and staff member. Brings them into the loop. They feel more connected. Something as small as that to a larger idea of last year, we were very, and I'm going to use the word generous, but that's the wrong word because it wasn't a gift. We were very liberal with our COVID time for sickness or quarantines. And our faculty and staff were very appreciative of that. We put their safety, their concerns first, and it did cost the district quite a bit of money, but that was worth it. We put that front and center. So I mean, that's a small and a big idea that we've done over the last 2 years, and listening to them. That's one thing that I didn't talk about. Using the feedback and being responsive. We are also, it goes back to that accountability versus support chart. we are going above and beyond with some things, getting teachers help in classrooms, but we are also asking for more accountability on their part. We made a change. This is a very important change. EAP, which is our employee assistance program. I think lots of districts have it by different names. We made a choice to change providers, and that really was a big difference. And destigmatizing mental health in our district was a huge thing, allowing more access to mental health supports.
Beautiful. Yeah, those are some really concrete things. Jesse and I'd love to be able to circle back on some of them, but in the interest of time, I'm going to move on and invite Leandra from Epic Academy to come off mute and share your thoughts and perspectives.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to have you here. I'm Leandra Jameson. I am a Chicagoan, born and raised mostly. And like Jesse, I started my career in 2005 as well as a teacher. Prior to becoming a teacher, I was a structural engineer for about 10 years. And I, took the journey into education because I wanted to create more Black and Brown scientists and mathematicians. I became an assistant principal in 2009, and then a principal from 2012 to 2017. I've had the privilege of working at some of Chicago's most premier schools, some selective enrollment schools, some international baccalaureate schools, and neighborhood schools. So I've seen what a thriving work environment looks like, no matter what kind of school or that the city determines that it is. And I've also worked in one of Chicago's sought out, wealthy, diverse suburbs, Oak Park, again. So I've gotten a chance to lead and participate in school communities that are stretching and wide as it pertains to population and performance. When I joined the charter world in 2017, and the charter world is very interesting in that we have a level of flexibility in how we staff, what kind of staffing models we use, our funding, how we can design our school day that maybe traditional district schools don't have. So that's been very interesting. And I also have a presentation that I will share. Where are we at? Oh, this is not Google Meet. So I have to share my whole screen, right?
You should be able to select a window to share once you hit share screen, but either way works.
Oh, I don't know. Sorry, guys.
You're all good. Everybody understands tech issues.
Do you? I hope so. Okay. I don't know what people see right now.
We don't actually see anything right now.
Okay.
Oh, and there we go.
But do you see? You see staffing challenges?
We can now see your slides. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks. So Epic is a single site, small charter on the southeast side of Chicago. It is a kind of a forgotten side of town that is going through gentrification. So we are one of the only high quality options in that neighborhood, which makes us attractive for families and staff members. We've gone through some leadership changes and transitions and recently unionized. So that caused, a bit of a bump in our staff culture and morale, I would say. So we do a survey through a company called Upbeat twice a year. I started it when I got there in June of 2020. And this is the comparison of some questions. And I picked out a couple themes from the survey to share. So this is a comparison we just took the survey this October, so this is a comparison from now and what we did in the spring in, I guess, want to say April or May. So teacher leadership and voice. This was concerning, right? So question number 38, administrators at my school actively seek input from teachers when making important decisions. So I get, I'll highlight that this is one of the reasons why we decided to use Thoughtexchange, because this number is very low, and it's actually even lower than it was in the spring. And teachers at my school play an active role in shaping school policies. Again, you see how low that is. So clearly that is something that the school needed to work on, which is likely why the teachers and staff opted to join the union in the first place, is what I'll assume, because they did that before I got there. Recruitment and hiring, another theme. So this was a bright spot. Apparently, once you get to the school, the community is welcoming. It does feel like a family because it's a small school. Most of the students come from the neighborhood in the school, and a lot of the teachers, this is their first job ever, their first teaching job and their first job ever. So they kind of built really strong relationships with each other. So it does have a familial kind of atmosphere. And we've improved since then. So I really like number 44, we have a hiring committee. So at the very least, our teachers are asked about some of our decisions in staffing. So we were intentional about that. And proactively recruits teachers from diverse backgrounds. That was really important. We serve about 99% Black and Latino population. And for a long time, our staff did not reflect the makeup of our students. So that's been a big push, and I see that people appreciate that. And belonging and well-being. Again, this one was tough. And this is a survey that just got issued this year. So we have a lot of work to do. My school is a place that supports teachers' mental well-being. So we dipped from in the spring, and I think that one of the mistakes that we've made, if I could be honest, is trying to go back to normal, maybe too much and too fast. People coming off of a 18-month time at home where not having to travel and not having to prep for work kind of gave them 3 hours of their day. And now the hustle and bustle has started again. And because we're short-staffed, I think we are asking more of our teachers than we ever have before. And while they are stepping up to the plate, this is causing some damage on their well-being. And you see the last two questions, 53 and 54, they feel like they belong at their school and people care about me at my school. Again, trying to understand what they mean by that is, again, where the Thoughtexchange part comes in, because if it's a welcoming community, then how do you not feel like you belong? And so, we have to understand like what people mean with those two questions. But we took a huge dip from the spring. Satisfaction and purpose. Again, tough. What I think stands out to me is question 76. I look forward to teaching every day. And so again, I mentioned that the charter world is interesting in that we have a bit more flexibility with school models and staffing models. And I think that this question kind of highlights the struggle that I think educators are having across our country about what does it mean to teach post-pandemic now? What does it mean to engage students post-pandemic? And what we found in our Thoughtexchange was really kind of centered around students a little bit. So I'm satisfied with being a teacher at this school. Again, we took a little bit of a dip, but that 53% is not, it's not a number that we like. So the need for Thoughtexchange for me was, again, I wanted to kind of get more authentic data. Surveys are great, but they are bounded, and we kind of give people the questions that they're going to answer, and we don't actually get what they're really thinking. Again, back to this slide, I really don't understand questions 53 and questions 54 because they are in contradiction with other questions, but this is kind of what happens with surveys. So Thoughtexchange was an opportunity for me to get authentic data and kind of dig deeper into some of the nuances, because that's kind of what people needle on. Like I think Jesse was saying, like, compensation, like, that's not something that keeps people at a job. One of the things that we know is that it's a teacher shortage, so people can work anywhere. So what are the little things that keep people wanting to be at your school? And Jesse, that's a great idea, like making sure that your subs feel welcome by giving them a t-shirt. Those are just small things that we can do to make sure staff stays and feels valued. Last but not least is, oh, we did that one. So this is the question that I asked on October 12th. So we have a goal of making EPIC one of Chicago's best places to work. So what are some things, experiences, staples, systems, procedures that would make this happen? I will be honest, and I thought that people were gonna give me these amazing ideas. Like, I thought they were gonna, kind of just think outside the box. And what it uncovered for me is that people's basic needs aren't being met in the workplace, period, especially as a teacher. So Thoughtexchange gives you a word cloud, and obviously the bigger words are the words that kind of came up the most. And so environment is in valued and respected. Those are words that stuck out a lot. So how the place feels and how the people feel is really at the core of what is going to keep our teachers at our school. So it also gives you some themes. And again, it's like a never-ending cycle. Because we don't have a full staff, the staff feels overworked, right? And they feel overworked because we don't have a full staff. And we don't have an answer for that. We are constantly looking for more people, but in the meantime, I think we have to figure out how to rearrange the school day so that our current staff doesn't have to be in 10 places at one time. Staff relationships. So being intentional about creating time and space for people in the building to build positive relationships with one another is something that we have thought a little bit more about, as opposed to having our professional development be all business, like creating time and opportunity for people to actually socialize and get to know one another, and not just in a corny community builder, but in a real authentic way. Jesse, I think you talked about this around mentoring. I think our teachers want to feel like they are being coached on how to become better practitioners, and this is not as punitive as it used to be. So a big focus on making sure they get consistent feedback that isn't attached to the evaluation system has been really important. Our union kind of fought really hard last year to make sure that this was a non-evaluative year. And I will admit, as a leader, I felt like that was, we were losing some level of accountability. But when I think about it as a human being, everyone is scared and everyone is, feels like they might not be being as successful as they would like to be in this new way of doing things. And consistency and expectations. So students really came up a lot in this thought exchange, and we're desperately trying to help our teachers understand that the same stress that they're feeling, our students are feeling the same as well. This one was key. The teachers need to feel valued and respected, not shamed. Again, some of this stuff was really hard to read, but it was really important to take back to the administrative team so they can understand that, like, what we're intending to communicate to people is maybe not coming across the way we want. And you see this, students need to be held accountable. I think that creating a balance of accountability and grace is going to be one of the big things that we have to conquer this whole year. The last thing is about release time and mental health assistance for educators. So Jesse talked about this as well. So this came up, and we are going to continue to do some of the things we did last year, like we paid for online mental health support for our entire staff for the full year. We increased our contribution to their healthcare benefits. We increased PTO days, and we also were very, very generous with COVID time when people test positive. We have a COVID clinic in our school. Every Monday, we test 25% of the student population, and any staff member who's unvaccinated must be tested, but anybody can be tested if they want. Just a few of the things that we're doing around safety. But the other thing that we are launching is a staff retreat. Again, like trying to make sure that we build in time for our staff members to get to know each other and have a focus on social emotional learning and showing them that we really do value and respect your time. And as much as we can, give you back some time, as well as create some space for you to unplug. We're definitely working towards that. So I think that is it for me.
It's beautiful, Leandra. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for getting into the nuts and bolts of what it looks like in practice for you to actually try to operationalize these things as well. I love what you said about, we had the impression that as a leadership group, we were creating an environment for people to succeed in. But some of what you heard in that at times raw way was there are things that are being missed or things that are not sufficiently understood, that can be a difficult and courageous thing to kind of receive, but then allow you to figure out what is it that we can change about our practice to really try to create an environment in which, back to your first question, would make EPIC, one of the best places to work in Chicago. And just reflecting on both what you and Jesse have shared today, it's really interesting. We're in this sort of flash in the pan moment where there's a lot of intense scrutiny and attention on the teacher shortage and staffing challenges, and rightfully so. It's really interesting to me in a lot of what both of you have shared, that the insights that you're bringing to bear are things that are seemingly not about that, but about creating the right operating environment in which people can be successful. And that is a huge part of kind of creating a context for you to figure out how to get through this, from school day structure, release time, mental health, professional growth, relationships, people feeling seen in a real way. And how do you do that? How do you operationalize that in a context where there's always another problem awaiting you around the corner? There's always another thing that's drawing on your time. And so I love the way that you've both kind of illustrated some of the practices that you've brought in. And shamelessly, I'm proud to see how Thoughtexchange has been leveraged in a valuable way to kind of enable that kind of inclusion and engagement. I could kind of dig in just with more questions for Leandra and Jesse for the rest of our time. But what I wanted to do is transition now to running a Thoughtexchange. And I'm going to introduce this in a couple of ways. I'll kind of walk you through how to participate and what we're looking to do with that. But before we do that, I wanted to just name up front that we're trying something a little bit different in the context of how we run this Thoughtexchange. And so the idea typically is exchanges are completely anonymous, and that's really where the value of the conversation flourishes from. In this case, we're going to run a typical Thoughtexchange, but then based on how different thoughts have risen in the conversation and the thoughts that have effectively been rated highest by the group that we have gathered in this event today, we're going to invite those of you who shared those thoughts that were rated very highly to have a bit of a brave moment, to identify yourself, to send a message in the chat to my colleague, Drew, who will then bring you up on stage and just create a moment, even if it's just 30 seconds, for you to elaborate on that particular insight or perspective that you've shared. And I know that can be terrifying, that you didn't sign up for a webinar where you're going to have to come up and actually say something. But really the thing that we're trying to underscore here is that none of us have this perfect solution to how to mitigate and navigate through this really challenging time. And in a way, the best thing that we can do is draw on the collective intelligence of the whole group of peers and practitioners who are out there on a daily basis trying to figure this out. And so we want to honor that and really center your voice as a way to sort of close out the rest of the event. So having said all of that, what I'm going to do is share my screen. Just give me a moment. Actually, the first thing I'm going to do is drop a link into the chat of the Zoom call. So for everybody right now, if you look in there, you'll see a link. And if you click on that link, you're going to be brought into this exchange. Here's the question that we're asking. What are the most important things you've done or plan to do in order to address staffing challenges in your schools? So again, just to kind of take the pressure off, this doesn't need to be something big and fancy. You are definitely taking an active approach one way or another. You're trying to implement new strategies, to do things even slightly differently, to try to make an impact on the way in which you're able to navigate these staffing challenges and really keep your group morale intact. And so we'd love to hear from you on what those novel things are that you're doing. It could be big, it could be small, it could be immediate, it could be long-term. Whatever it is, please do share it in the exchange. And for those of you who are feeling like you're doing something, but it's not that important or it's not that significant, I would say just throw that out of your mind for a moment, be vulnerable, share it. And through the rating process that the whole group will go through, that will allow folks to really determine what they think is most insightful and relevant for the whole group to hear. For those of you who haven't participated in an exchange before, you can also, if you want to use your phone, you can open your camera, point it at the QR code, and a link will pop up on your screen, and you'll be able to participate that way. And again, just try to share at least one thought. If everybody can share one thought, we're going to have a really rich data set to work with. And once you've done that and you've shared your thought, you can then move on to rating the thoughts of others. Again, that's going to be completely anonymous. You can rate it a 5 if you feel really strongly about it. You can rate it a 1 if it doesn't really resonate. And the more rating that we do, the better data we'll have, the more visibility we'll have on the issues and insights that really resonate amongst this whole group. So I'm going to be quiet and give you a few minutes. I'll give you about 4 minutes to participate in this. And again, just wanted to really urge folks, I know it's a little bit outside of the norm. Would love to get you into this conversation. And once we come back and look at the results, I'm going to ask a few of you to go one step further, identify yourselves through the chat if you see the thought that I'm talking about. And then I'm going to give you an opportunity to come up and just expand a little bit on that and where you're coming from and share a bit of your story. And again, just in thinking about the framing of the question, like what are the important things that you're doing to help meet this moment and address those staffing challenges? It can be, doesn't have to be like necessarily a specific hiring tactic. It can be anything around morale or mental health or creating a safe place for your staff, whatever it is that you're doing in all the complexity of this subject matter to try to meet the moment. Let's highlight those ideas. So this is great. We've got 35 folks in the exchange so far. For those of you who are sitting on the fence, I'd urge you to come on in, participate. Even if you don't have something that you feel you need to share, you can rate the thoughts of others and see what else is out there for consideration. And that's a great way to be heard in this conversation as well. So I'm going to give about 45 seconds. I know that this is tight, but in these last seconds, if you can just try to get that last thought out or rate as many thoughts as you can within these last 30 seconds. And then we're going to dive into a bit of a conversation here. Okay, I'm going to give you 10 more seconds, and then I'm going to close out the exchange. This is wonderful. Some great thoughts in here. Thank you for everybody in your active participation. So I'm going to close the exchange. You're not going to be able to do any more rating. Sorry for that, but it'll just help give us an accurate sense of the conversation. To put it into context, we just took 4 minutes. We heard from 36 people, 35 unique thoughts, and about 440 ratings. Those ratings are what really give us some context as to how the group is resonating with the different thoughts and perspectives that have been shared. So this first thought that I wanted to highlight, again, in response to what are the most important things you've done or plan to do in order to address staffing challenges in your schools. Celebrate small successes with personalized notes and texts, a minimum of 5 a day. It's about connection and relationship building. Okay, so here's the hard part that I sort of told you about. We're going to ask whoever shared this thought, if you can just put a note in the chat, in the Zoom call, in the chat function, and then my colleague Drew is going to bring you up into the conversation and create a little bit of space for you to just talk about this and why this feels like a really important part of how you're trying to navigate through this right now. It doesn't have to be a TED Talk. It's just a moment to sort of hear from you on why this is a practice that really has mattered and made an impact in your context. Great, we've got another James here who shared that thought, and here they are. James, you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, wonderful, we can hear you.
Well, you know, the 2 big buckets of work that we got in education is literacy and relationships. And, you know, you've got to make sure that you're focusing on those relationships, because that's how we build our trust. That's how we build everything that we do around creating a student-centered culture. It improves that accountability piece, because, you know, we get to connect with our folks, so they hear us and they know that they're important and they matter on a daily basis. So it also gives us a good modeling practice to say this is what we sort of expect of, and helps build that positive culture for our kids on a daily basis. So that's why.
Beautiful. Thank you for that story, James, and for underscoring, you know, in clear terms, just the importance of the human element in navigating all the complexity of the issue right now, and just really putting at the center the importance of relationship and keeping that thread of connection really alive and vibrant. We're going to look at a few other thoughts here. So we see this next thought: use current staff as advocates for the school. Their voices are very powerful. I love that. Would love to invite that person to just identify themselves in the chat as James did, and we'll create a little bit of space for you to just expand on this thought. Thanks, Adine.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right. All along, I've been in education for many, many years, and have been a part of building a couple of different schools. And one of the things that I learned was the best advocates are the staff themselves. And particularly when you are taking those small steps to begin with, people are working very hard and they seek to be part of a team. So again, a lot of this is taking pride and being honest with yourself. So they're working as part of a team that is making a difference for the students. And so that can be pretty motivating to move along things. And they want to be working with others who are strong with those feelings, those positive feelings, and those colleagues who support the common goal of student success and having a vibrant school community.
I love it. It's enormously powerful. And we often look to leadership as, the ones who are going to really influence the way things can occur within any school or district. But I think there's a real power in naming that staff are your greatest enabler. And if they're not well, it can have really big implications for how things are going, not only in the classroom, but also more broadly in the community. And so keeping them as strong advocates and ensuring that they're prioritized in that way is urgently important. Thanks for sharing that. Great, we've got another thought here. I personally walk the building each morning to check in with staff. At the end of the day, relationships matter. Hear, hear. So would love to invite this brave soul to identify themselves. Is that you, Christian?
There we go. Yes. I'm actually the director of finance in my building, and I could easily just stay in my office and sign checks. But before I worked in education, I worked in the private sector. And I remember the CEO of one of the companies that I worked for would walk around the floor every day and say hi to people. And when I first started working there, on the third day, he knew my name, even though there were hundreds of people that worked there. And so this year I took it as my personal charge. Every morning when I come in, I put my stuff down, I say hi to my team, and then I walk downstairs and see every director in the building and as many teachers as I can. I try to remember the teachers' names who just started this year and ask them if they need anything from me, because along with doing finances, I also maintain everyone's benefits, and I'm the first line of defense if they have a problem with healthcare and things like that. And relationships matter. I want them to know that I'm accessible, and if they have a problem, they can deal with me personally. And I hope at least that's my little way of helping to maintain a morale and communication and retention.
Beautiful. Thank you for that, Christian. We're going to take time for one more thought, and then we're going to wrap this up. So whoever this lucky person is, hired a permanent sub to relieve teachers throughout the year for planning. Teachers need to feel and have a break while at work more than prep. Hi, Chastity.
Hi, how are you guys?
Great, thanks. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. So I will say that my intentions for this started last year, just gearing up, I'm sure like everyone else, like what are the things we need coming back to school, which I don't think any of us really feel like we have all the things that we need during these times. But this person who has been here for a couple of years knows the students. And so it's really important that teachers felt like they're also handing their class over to someone who knows our scholars and families and routines. And so she started just like subbing again for when teachers are out. And then once we got, a lot of talking with teachers and surveys about like how they're feeling overwhelmed, I was like, okay, we need to take this a step further. And so we've done like a sign up where everyone knows that they're going to get a turn, for this at least first semester of she will also come in and sub your class for the day. And you have to be like in the building or somewhere in one of our buildings, like planning, but you don't have to be with kids. And I think this has allowed like lots of collaboration between like their SPED and pull out ESL teachers, but also just a peace, right? It's a hectic day. And I think that this helps them feel like valued as educators. Like even when I'm at work, my boss is like advocating for me to have time to do the things that we're being asked to do as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, such an important thought there. And thank you for sharing that and putting it so poignantly. I think that, what we're seeing in a lot of the partners that we work with right now, especially among staff and teachers, is time is that thing that they cherish most. And so when you create that opportunity for more collaboration and you give people the respect to know that, their class in this case is going to be in good hands, it's a great sign of respect and a really great gift to be able to offer your folks right now. Thank you for sharing that. So we are almost at time. And with the last couple of minutes, I just wanted to give both Leandra and Jesse an opportunity, 30, 45, 60 seconds to share any last thoughts that are sitting with you as you came through this conversation. And Jesse, we can start with you if you don't mind.
I just want to reinforce just the comments that were just made. I walk through the halls every morning as well. It's something I did as a principal, and I got away from it, and I've started up again the last 2 years. But I'll say it's great that the faculty and staff see me, but that is something I do for myself as well. It's fulfilling for me, and that's my personal care as well. And if you can do two things at once, this faculty and staff see me, I can answer questions. But yeah, Christian, fortunately, we're a K-12 building, so if I ever need just a hit of love, I just go to the kindergarten classroom, right? But it's also, I get to walk around the school and I see the teachers, they see me, and that is one of my favorite part of the days. And I got that from somebody else. They said, what do you want to do every morning? And I came back to it. And also the permanent daily subs. Our school district, we have around $150,000 budget for subs. And what I did is I've hired multiple permanent daily subs. So take that one permanent daily sub, magnify it. The teachers get to know them, our kids get to know them. They become part of our school, and that's helped us with our sub problem because they know they come to school every day, no matter what. So it's more of a permanent and fixed income from them as well. So I enjoyed that, James, because I'm not alone. We all have similar ideas.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Jesse. And last word to you, Leandra.
Yeah, I literally keep my door open so that people know that you don't have to knock on it to come in. And one of the things that I think is really important, I mean, there's a principal in the building, and so I try not to overstep, the positional authority, but people know who I am, and I share personal details about my life so that folks can know that I struggle with the same thing you struggle with. I got to drop my kid off at school just like you do. I got to do homework when I get home just like you do. And so I think that just being relatable helps a whole lot. And we just launched a parent partnership program to act as our permanent daily school support. So whether they're subbing, whether they're supporting us in English language learners, whether they are helping out with security, I think that students seeing family members or seeing community members inside the school is going to also make them feel like it's more, they're more at home. And then I think our school staff will feel like they have the support of the wider community after this.
Beautiful. I'm going to end. We are just 1 minute over, so I apologize for keeping everybody a little bit long. I'm really grateful to Leandra and Jesse and every one of you who came, gave us this time and actively participated in making this conversation meaningful. And just want to underscore, even through all of the complexity of this, how elemental and essential it is to keep those connections alive, to make sure that people feel seen and heard and respected through crisis. And that in and of itself is a way to kind of make sure that you're solid through the challenges, whatever they may be. Thanks to everybody for being here, for creating an opportunity for this conversation. And we wish you a beautiful rest of your day.